we keep criticizing that new generation,
Yeah.
In the early 2000s, we were saying, but what about the Gen Z? What about the millennials? But I think at the end of the day, we all want to do the right thing.
Welcome to Lead From Within, the podcast for people leaders that explores the fascinating intersection of mental health, leadership, and performance. Hello, I'm Dr. Nick Taylor, and welcome to this episode of Lead From Within. In today's conversation, I'm thrilled to be joined by Tania Gandamihardja, Chief Human Resource Officer at BAE Systems. Tania has worked in the HR leadership space for over 2 decades and supported a range of impactful companies on a truly worldwide scale. She's also a global citizen. She's lived in Paris, London, Bangkok, and Texas, to name just a few. And she's helped global teams to thrive by implementing processes and initiatives that ultimately allow her teams to spend time on what really matters, the people. Tania, thank you so much for joining today. I'm really looking forward to the conversation. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Nick. And thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation as well.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I'd love to start by asking you to tell us a bit more about BAE Systems for people who are not familiar with the organization, and also tell us more about your role as well.
We've been around actually for more than 25 years as an amalgamation of different companies, ranging back to maybe over 100 years ago. So BAE Systems is a FTSE 100 company. We employ around 100,000 employees around the globe. We're in 40 countries. Our main markets are in the UK, Saudi Arabia, Australia, and the United States. We supply some of the world's most technologically advanced solutions across the defense, aerospace, and security industries. We build fighter jets. Typhoon is one of them. We build naval ships. We build aircraft carriers. We also send satellites into space, and also we're in the intelligence system. But at the very heart of it is the people who we employ. We're essentially a skills enterprise relying on the talent of our people, delivering what the armed forces need to keep ourselves or to keep our population safe.
Thank you so much. And it's as we're speaking, I live quite near a military base, and a big helicopter just flew overhead as though it were kind of setting the scene for the answer. And tell us about your role in terms of what does it mean to be the CHRO at BAE Systems?
Gosh, a lot of responsibilities come with the role. My role ranges from being in charge or looking after recruitment, talent management, rewards and benefits, all the way to employee experience across the company. But as you said, one of my passion is on the development of our employees, particularly how to engage the younger generation in STEMs subjects, because we are, BAE Systems is, I think, the largest employer of early careers, graduates and apprentices in the UK. And so in order for us to be able to deliver what the customer need, and we have a huge backlog order, we do need the talent to do that. And so by being involved in that front will definitely help the company deliver what we say we're going to deliver to our customer.
Tell us a bit more for the global audience. What does STEM stand for? What does that mean? Like, why is that a challenge? Why is that something that needs additional attention?
So STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and maths. And traditionally, what we've seen is that these subjects are mainly geared towards boys in school. And so what we are trying to do in BAE Systems, and many companies are actually trying to do this, because we're trying to create an inclusive working environment for all our employees. We do want to see a more diverse population within the company who are taking, or who are doing STEM subjects. Yes, we have, functional roles in the company, but we want to see more of a diverse population working in STEM subjects. I mean, for me personally, I was lucky to have attended an all-girls school where I didn't feel any pressure when I did, my GCSEs or A-levels in sciences. Whereas, I know, and studies have shown this, when you're in a mixed school, the boys tend to do STEM subjects, where the girls tend to do humanities or non-STEM subjects. So as a company, we're trying to encourage girls actually to be interested to take on STEM subjects. And we do this in many different ways.
What are some of those ways that you do that?
One of the things that I'm very proud to share is our work or our collaboration with the Royal Navy and Royal Air Force. So together for the last 17 years or so, we've organized road shows where we go to about 520 schools a year, where we give live experiences or showcase STEM subjects in everyday life. And year to date, we've reached 1.3 million students. And what's
Wow.
great about it is that, during the 1 millionth pupil celebration, where we've reached 1 millionth student a few years ago, one of our, I think, deputy engineering director attended that celebration. And she says, I was one of you kids, I was one of you sitting here when BAE Systems came to our school and talked about, I can't remember what it was, but, they talked about a STEM subject. And she said, her interest was piqued. And now she's working as, she started off as an engineer in the company, and now she's looking after, a group of people. So the fact that we do that is amazing. And also we've just celebrated our 10-year anniversary of working together with Movement to Work. Usually these people come from a low socioeconomic background, so they're not in education, nor are they at work. And they spend 3 weeks with us. And typically at the end of the 3 weeks, they either go into further education or find a job. And in the last 10 years, we've probably had close to 1,000 people come through the company, and 600 have been successful. And it's great to actually see that 300 of them ended up having a job with BAE Systems, and many of them go through the apprenticeship route. And so these are the different activities that we're doing. We have around 200 STEM ambassadors, and we continue to increase that. We go to universities, we go to schools, we invite school students to come to visit our academies. I visited one a few weeks ago in Gotston. We just opened one, actually, I think it was earlier this year, where there is a room for students to come and listen to, to us talking about how great it is to build a ship. So we continue to do that great work for years to come, which hopefully then, will move the needle in terms of how many STEM students we are piquing their interest in the subject.
It's so important, isn't it? And we all know that any subject that has a more diverse group of practitioners is ultimately going to be have better output. It's inspiring to hear the great work that you're doing. And I know this is a topic that's you're very passionate about. You studied chemistry with management science at university. So you yourself are somebody that came up through that science back through. So tell us a bit more about you as a child. If we had met Tania age 12 or before, what kind of person were you? And tell us about your life a little bit.
So I was born in London to a Thai mother and Indonesian father. I'm actually married to a French Italian. So I'm, as you said in your introduction, I can consider myself citizen of the world. And when I was about 6, my father wanted his kids to learn more about their heritage. So he packed us up from northwest London, and we went to Indonesia. So we stayed there for 7-8 years. And it was but it was a very enriching experience for us, because then, I have an older brother, a sister and a younger brother. So we learned about, the culture, etc. And when I was about to start my GCSE, he said, "Okay, enough, let's go back." So then we went. We went back. But the experience in Indonesia was amazing because we lived in the middle of nowhere. It was a nickel mining company which my father worked for, and it was in front of the seventh deepest lake in the world. And so our houses were opposite the lake, and so our childhood was really in the outdoors. And I remember when I was 11, I took a windsurf out, which had actually a profound impact on my mental health and probably well-being up to today, and it informed my resilience. Took a windsurf out and went into the lake, and all of a sudden the weather turned and it was raining. And I was 11, I was tiny. Well, I am, so I'm quite short. And so I wasn't able to continue to hold the sail, so I let it go. But it was raining, and then when I was, and I had a life jacket on, and I was thinking, okay, and I was a strong swimmer at the time, and I asked myself, shall I swim it to the shore or shall I wait for help? I waited because I thought, well, I wasn't sure I could swim, but then it was getting darker and darker, and here was I, a small child at 11 years old, not knowing what to do. And I said to whoever was out there, I give up, I'm here. I'll see what will happen. And then, 30 minutes later, thankfully, someone came, and
Wow.
rescued me he was in a hobby cat. But I think when I look back upon that, I'm thinking, wow, what an experience. I didn't tell my parents until the next day when the head of security for the company called my father and said, "Oh, I heard that Tania, was all alone by herself at like 5:30 in the afternoon." And my father said, "What? I didn't know." So my father came back and said, "What happened there?" And then I started, I broke down and I cried. But when I look back on that experience, I think that experience made me resilient.
That's so interesting. What a story to share, and thank you very much for sharing it. And there's quite a lot of commentary and reflection at the moment that one of the problems with how we are raising children is that we are
Absolutely.
not giving them enough access to risk, and we're protecting them too much, and that impacts on resilience, to your point, and also the ability to self-navigate and manage emotions and things. So that is such a strong example of where you were put in a situation which is really risky, really scary, and you came through it, and now you're reflecting all these years later on how it impacted your resilience.
Yeah, and in fact, I was talking to a friend. I was thinking, maybe I should do a deeper dive into that one event to see what impact did it really have on me, because sometimes I wonder when I find myself in difficult situation, I'm thinking, well, I survived that. I mean, at 11 years old, you survived that, Tanya, so I'm sure you can survive whatever's in front of me.
In terms of thinking about then your mental health and your mental health journey, like, is it a topic that is close to your heart? Is it something you think about a lot? Has it impacted on your personal and professional journey?
Oh my God, absolutely. Absolutely. Before joining BAE Systems, I was in the oil and gas industry, which can be quite a tough industry. It's cyclical. And so you never know when you're going to be out of the company. After 20, I stayed in one company for 23 years. And even just going through that experience is already making one quite resilient. But also, I moved a lot. So they would, pluck you from one place, and then all of a sudden, they plant you in the middle of nowhere for 2 or 3 years. And once you start getting the hang of it, they pick you up again and move you again. So I think having had that experience early on in my career definitely helped my resilience and also adaptability. And when I start thinking about my own mental health, I think those experiences really did help in my working out challenges that I may be experiencing. Because, when you're single, moving around takes a lot out of you, but the fact that I was able to continue doing it must have had some advantages to my, well-being.
I can totally see how that would be true. But how did you end up in HR? Like what was the transition point for you from studying the world of chemistry and all of the complexities that go with that, thinking I know where I'm going to end up, it's here. Like what was that journey?
So it's a funny one. I like chemistry, hence why, I did it. And in fact, I'm an organic skincare formulator. So I still formulate, skin cream, etc., because
Wow.
I love chemistry. But what got me out of chemistry was the fact that during my third year, we ended up spending hours on end in a lab and, 20, 25 hours a week. And I start thinking, I can't be doing this. I'm an extrovert. I get gain energy from meeting people. And so after graduating, I said, no, I'm not going to do chemistry. But, at the time, I really didn't know what I wanted to do, to be honest. Then I stumbled into publishing sales, did that for 2 years. And Asia was booming at the time in the mid 1990s. It was called, the tiger economy. And so I decided, why don't I give it a shot? And my father had just passed away the year before, and he wanted one of his kids to go to Indonesia. My sister was in med school, so of course she can't do it. My brother was young, so I thought, well, why don't I give it a go? So I actually quit, went to Indonesia. Before quitting, I sent my CVs out to, the top 5 consulting companies back then, and landed in Indonesia. And within a month, I got an offer from PwC to join them as an HR consultant. So that's how I pivoted. And, 2 years in, I decided, I'm quite interested in this thing called HR. Why don't I go back to the UK and do masters in HR? So I applied, got accepted. But before actually getting on a plane, I was offered a job by my previous company. And I was like, I'm not sure. And they said, well, we can give you much more of an HR experience. We can teach you HR more so than a master's in HR can. I was going, I'm not sure really. So I said, okay, I'll do it for a year. So I did it for 23 years. And that's how I got into HR, which of course I love it. It's my passion. Hence why I'm still in the métier to this day.
But why do you love it? What drives you on it?
Because I think, so I love people. I think people is at the heart of any company. Without people, forget about having a successful company. But in order for a company to be successful, you need to know what to do with the motivation and the retention and the engagement of the people. And I think that's where my interests lie, is how do we ensure that we have an engaged and motivated workforce to deliver a business commitment. And so whilst, the fact that meeting people and helping them is very close to my heart, I think another side of that is how do we make sure that we can deliver a business commitment by enabling our people.
Yeah, and do you find that that's very interesting? Is you've got more and more senior and ended up kind of in the most senior role in these very big organizations. Have you been able to stay close to that original passion, or has it evolved or changed, or do you still feel hands-on enough, or does it become very strategic? Like, what's that evolution like as you become more and more senior?
So I think you become more strategic, but tell my staff, they can't. I mean, as my staff, they can't keep me away from people. To a point where, they would say, can you stop saying yes to speaking and meeting people, because we can't put it, all in your schedule. So I think in order to be successful in my role, I still need to be close to people. I still need to be able to find the time to speak with them, because otherwise, how would I know how can I find out what make them tick by sitting here in the office and not speaking to anyone?
100%. And you can only really inform the strategy by knowing what's going on the ground as well.
Absolutely.
What do you think has happened that you didn't see happening in the space? So if you went back 20 years ago, and we said around 2024, where do we want to be? Like, what have we won at as a community, and what have we failed at? Where is there still work to do?
I think the advent of AI coming into the workplace, 20 years ago, we didn't talk about it, right? 10, even I think 5 years ago, we didn't talk about it. And so, but, it's very difficult when you are not, in my position 10, 15 years ago, we didn't know that it was coming. Even if we did know it was coming, I don't think we had a clear understanding of how that will or could impact the workplace and our employees. What I find interesting is that with every generation coming into the workplace, we keep criticizing that new generation,
Yeah.
So I remember, in the early 2000s, we were saying, but what about the Gen Z? What about the millennials? And every year or every few years, each time there's a new generation, we seem to be criticizing them. But I think at the end of the day, everybody we all want to do the right thing, right? We come into the workforce with positive intention, understanding what needs to be done, and we will do it. So I think, we keep talking about, what about the next generation coming in? Are they not resilient enough? Are they not committed enough? But you will still see or find people who are committed and as resilient as, those people who came before them.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a real optimist when it comes to generations growing up and coming into the workforce. I think each generation has a unique voice and set of experiences and perspectives that, going back to that topic of diversity, it just adds to the diversity of the conversation.
Absolutely.
And that's only advantageous. And with AI, it's really interesting to think about how quickly, because I agree, I don't think people knew how quickly it was going to come and how dominant it would become within a short space of time. A colleague of mine was recently at one of the big HR events and was walking through the halls of the providers and just came back and commented, it just AI is everywhere now.
Right.
But that's quite interesting from your position, because then it might be being created everywhere, but how you then incorporate it and leverage it in an advantageous way within an enterprise global organization where security is really important, as it is in your industry or in the financial industry and many others as well. There's a fine line to be walked there. Like, how do you represent the opportunity of AI in HR at a board level, for example, or within the exec team?
So that's a very good question. So for BAE Systems, we are just starting to look at how AI can be applied in the company. We are starting to pilot some with AI, where it reduces, for example, time to look at documents, reduces time to gather all the information that we've inputted into a system, for example. But we are not there yet in terms of fully leveraging the AI capability, just because we are in a defense industry where we need to be very, very careful on how we utilize AI. So compared to maybe, tech companies which are already utilizing AI to its full capability, we are nowhere near there.
And you're not alone in that. It represents this massive opportunity, but it has to be done ethically, responsibly, safely, securely. Like, it's so critical, isn't it, to the success? Okay, switching topic again, to thinking back where we have done good work and where we haven't done good work over the last 20 years. Do you think that, I know this is a topic you're very passionate about, do you think we have done enough over the last 20 years to improve the ability for underrepresented groups to get parity to opportunity? Or do you think that's still, again, an area where there's more to be done?
That we are still working on it. We're still improving on it. Otherwise, we would be done. Otherwise, we will no longer be working with movement to work, for example.
Yeah.
That's one of the initiatives that I think is helping people from lower socioeconomic background to get into the door of companies such as ours. So I think there is still a lot of work to be done. I think it would be great to see more companies joining forces with us in doing that. I think one of the advantages that we have as a big enterprise is that we are able to offer apprenticeship programs to in terms of the number of available spaces. We recruit over 2,300 early careers, 1,300 apprentices in 2024 alone. So we have that the places to offer to people who are interested to join us. But I think absolutely, Nick, more can be done. We're not there yet.
Yeah, I think that's right, and it's also just thinking within the BAE Systems workforce that it's such a multifaceted organization with so many different types of workers in such different roles. I mean, it really is extraordinarily broad. Going back to that point about like working with others or coming together, how do you support other organizations to follow your example with, for example, these apprenticeships? How do you engage in other people coming up through the ranks of HR to be able to do best practice so that we're truly handing the baton on to that group to keep running from our position versus needing to relearn and redo?
So we're members of different trade associations. We are members of different networking associations. So we do play, we do understand the role in which we play is very important, especially within the defense industry. We're very close to, the Royal Navy, Royal Air Force. And so we have regular conversations with them and even with people in government and share best practices with them. So we don't shy away from it because I think at the end of the day, we want the UK to keep producing innovative technology, led solutions for our armed forces, because it's them who are keeping us safe, especially in today's environment.
I think the armed forces around the world have there's lots of great examples of where the well-being of personnel is prioritized because of the understanding that well-being will have on the performance of the unit. So I remember the first time I saw General Nuji speak, who was leading at the time well-being in the armed forces, and he in the UK, and it's speaking very passionately about the link between well-being and performance. And I think I don't know if they're still doing this, but the UK military were certainly talking about mental fitness versus well-being per se. And I loved the way they were leveraging language that resonated in that culture and environment in relation to the topic of mental health. And how do you think at BAE Systems language around the topic of mental health and well-being needs to be finessed to reach that group of workers that you have?
Well, we are still on the journey, as you know. We have different initiatives that we implemented to, I suppose, get rid of the stigma about talking about mental health or well-being. During COVID, as you know, Nick, we worked with your organization. So now, Unmind app is available to all our employees and also members of their families, which works in tandem with our employee assistance program. We have trained mental first aiders in the company, so they know how to have the conversation with our employees. It's not an area where I would say we're an expert in. We are just starting on that journey. But as a company, we are aware that it is such an important strategic priorities. So we have to do it. And I wish more and more companies will look at it as a strategic priority because, by having employees who can bring themselves to work, can have or feel that they have physical and psychological safety, can have the conversation about their mental health. As by having all of that, we will have a more productive workforce, which means a great thing, to the productivity of the business. So it is very important.
It also links in as well, doesn't it, with what we started talking about in relation to STEM topics. If we want people, if we want to attract a really broad, diverse group of people into the fields of science, engineering, mathematics, technology, then it's really important that they know that the career that will follow is a career which will be supportive of their well-being. That is going to be an environment that encourages their own growth and their own reaching human potential and flourishing. I think historically, maybe some of those, some of the career paths that would follow from those subjects might have led to environments, workplaces, which were less focused on well-being. And actually, we can't create diversity if some people are saying, well, I don't want to work in that type of environment in the future. So it really does become, it's a long-term kind of topic, really, isn't it? We need to be thinking about, how do we keep somebody engaged at 16 when they're choosing their subjects? How do we do it at 21? How do we do it at 25? How do we do it at 30? How do we do it at 65? I think making sure the workplace is looking after the people is a really critical piece of the puzzle, actually.
Absolutely. And, in addition to having supporting policies and practices, we also make sure that we look at what other things we can help with. So, you mentioned different stages in life. We've just recently looked at or reviewed our carers policy. So now we make sure that, employees who have a caring responsibility are able to get days off, paid days off. We're looking at our leave for employees who are, adopting or having children through surrogacy. So absolutely, you're 100%. I think we need to look at it holistically and not just, in silos. So mental being is not about, okay, we've got an employee assistance programs and you're done with that, right? You need to, I think what you said is spot on in terms of looking at the employee life cycle and what do we do during these, their different stages in their lives, because I think is very important.
Oh, absolutely. And all the evidence backs up as well that how somebody is feeling inside. So, I like the Richard Layard definition of well-being, which essentially defines it as a subjective inner state. So, how happy we're feeling.
Exactly.
We know that when even without reading any studies, we all just know through our own lived experience, if we're feeling happier, we're more likely to be communicating effectively with people. We're more likely to be interested. We're more likely to be curious by information. We're better learners. We're able to focus more effectively. We're more creative. The list goes on, really. So providing environments where people can be happy and feel that they're able to invest in themselves, we're all going to win. And we're going to attract that diverse pool of people as well, because it's an attractive environment to work in.
Absolutely.
I'd love to learn, Tania, from your side, like, as you've become a leader, where did you go for inspiration, and where do you go today for inspiration?
Where do I go for inspiration? I think early on in my career, I had an amazing boss who was very authentic, and she was pretty high up in the organization, but she was, always authentic. She was always genuine. If she didn't know something or she didn't understand it, she will say, can you please explain? And being in a male-dominated industry back then, it was very refreshing. And so I looked up. She inspired me. I looked up to her, and she inspired me to then be my authentic self. I realized that I don't have to be an alpha female in order to lead. And so, and I've hopefully stayed true to that. Because, you can be yourself and still be effective and an impactful leader. I don't believe in taking a different persona in order to be more impactful. And so, I've stayed true to that, hopefully, Nick. And I continue to draw from that.
In my experience, I've found it easier to be authentic the older I've become. And the more senior I've become, the easier I have found it, somewhat paradoxically in a way. When I started on Mind, I remember leaving, I was an NHS psychologist and had been a student for 10 years before that. And I remember thinking, I think I'm going to have to cut my hair off if I want to go into the world of work. So that would
Did
have been,
you?
that would have been, no, I didn't. That would have
Well,
been
good for
inauthentic
you.
though, wouldn't it? But so how do you be authentic? What does that actually mean for you? Is it that is there a big difference to Tania at home, to Tania at work? Do you what does it mean?
No, although probably my husband would say, well, Tanya at home is a bit more grumpy because, he he sees me when I'm, after an exhausting day at work. No, I think for me, what it means is I don't put up a different persona as soon as I walk in the door. You know, when people see me at home, it's the Tanya that they see at work. Yes, of course, I don't dance around, the kitchen in the office when there's a song playing. I don't do that, which I would do at home. I would still, be professional in the workplace, but the, what you see is what you get with me. And so I don't know how to describe it, but I suppose this is Tanya.
And have you always been like that?
I have always been like that, because also when I first started out, someone actually said to me, Tanya, you should treat everybody the way you want to be treated because someday a team member of yours can end up being your boss, which was
Right.
true in the industry that I was in. And so, those two messages or advice that I got earlier on, I kept in me. And so yeah, I treat everyone the same.
No, I totally get that. And are you a reader? Are there particular books you like, or do you listen to podcasts or?
So I listen to podcasts. I read. My problem is, and maybe you can help me here. I love reading. So the only place I get butterflies is when I walk into a bookshop. So I ended up buying books. But then what I end up doing is I start reading one book and I don't finish it. And I read another book and I don't finish it. And so then what I end up doing is I end up buying the book, but also downloading the audio on Audible.
And the publishers are delighted.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's what a waste of money. Or I listen to podcasts.
Yeah, I know, but I'm the same. I used to really beat myself up about how long it would take me to read books, and then also by the fact that I didn't finish them.
Right.
And so I've often had that, and now I've made peace with it. So my books, next to my bed, there is a pile of half-read books, which I may or may not finish. But I sometimes think you don't necessarily need the whole journey to find value
You
in it
don't,
somehow.
right? So you made me feel so much better. I'm glad I'm not the only one, Nick.
Is there anything that you would recommend to people that you've heard recently or you've read recently that you think is actually stuck with you and maybe is going to change the way you're going to show up at work or the future of work from your eyes?
So I love a podcast called Hidden Brain. It's by NPR, so it's American, but it's all about psychology. Like how to win people. Do you build resilience? So I love listening to that on the way to work. The current book that I'm reading is about an old kingdom, Majapahit in Indonesia, which I wanted to learn more about. So yeah, but I love Brené Brown's book.
Yeah.
Which I think, in the last 20 years, those books have definitely helped me. But one book that really helped me early on in my career was the Don't Sweat the Small Stuff.
Right. And why that particularly? Why did that stand out?
So one day I was very, very stressed out because my inbox was always full and my to-do list I never ticked anything off of my to-do list. And I'm someone who's unfortunately very hard on myself. And so that really created a lot of pressure on me. And I went into a bookshop, picked up a book, read it, and it says, no matter what, your inbox will always be full. You could have had an accident, be in a hospital, people won't know, and they will keep sending you emails. So your inbox will always be full. And I kind of made peace with that, which is like, don't sweat the small stuff, which is true. When I find myself being challenged in different, on different topics at work, I just have to go back to that experience I had when I was windsurfing, right? Like, Tanya, don't set the small stuff because you managed to, to overcome that event.
I think this has been ascribed to many different people, but I don't actually know who said it, but on their deathbed, they said, I spent most of my life worrying about things that never happened.
Absolutely.
Tania, thank you so much for your time. It's been delightful talking to you, and I've loved every minute. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you for listening to Lead From Within, brought to you by Unmind. Subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Leave us a like and please do review if you found it valuable. Follow Unmind on LinkedIn for updates on all things regarding leadership, performance, and well-being. To find out more about Unmind's workplace well-being solutions for enterprise businesses, please go to unmind.com. That's unmind.com. Thank you and see you next time.